Good evening and welcome to the Board of Adjustment meeting for April 21st, 22. I'm going to open the public hearing, call to order the public hearing. Will you call the roll, please?
Good evening, Ms. Denny. I'm here, Jamie Fensky on the line.
Thank you.
So I'll go ahead and call roll. Thank you. Mr. Nichols,
Here.
Mr. Jenkins,
Here.
Ms. Hudson.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Cusick.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Denny.
I'm here.
That's 5 present.
Thank you. Will you introduce the staff, please?
Yes, ma'am. So good evening, everyone. My name is Jamie Fensky. I'm one of the planners here at Kent County. I also have Scott Blair there in the room with you, our IT staff, Mark Kennedy, and looks like Tom might be there with him, sorry, and our legal counsel, Fred Townsend.
Okay, so at this point, I'm going to ask everyone to rise so we can pledge allegiance to our flag. Okay, additions or alterations to the agenda. And I had requested that when we get to old business, Becker Morgan be postponed again. So anything else I should know?
That was also by their request to be not heard at this meeting.
Good, thank you. Okay, so at this point, when staff is ready, introduce the public hearing, please.
Okay, so again, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jamie Fensky, and I'll preside as the hearing officer for tonight's public hearing. This hearing is being conducted for the purpose of providing the citizens of the county an opportunity to present testimony on these applications before the Kent County Board of Adjustment. Everyone will have an opportunity to speak. This will provide those who wish an opportunity to give their testimony. If there is a group of interested citizens in favor or opposed to any of the applications, they may wish to elect one spokesperson among them to present testimony to the board. There is an official recording of these proceedings being made. Therefore, we ask that only one person speak at a time and that they speak clearly. Furthermore, there shall be no cross-examination of witnesses permitted during the public hearing, but the board can ask the applicant questions after any opposition if necessary. As a courtesy to other participants in this hearing, a maximum of 5 minutes will be allotted to any person who wishes to provide testimony. The chairperson of the board has the discretion to allow additional time if deemed necessary. To make statements when your application is called and for the record, please give your name, address, and allow our attorney to swear you in prior to providing testimony. Copies of any written statements or exhibits used during the hearing should be presented for identification so that they may be included in the permanent record. For procedure on each variance application will be as follows. The legal notice will be read on each case prior to the receipt of testimony. There will be a brief explanation of the application by staff. The board will then receive testimony from all of those in favor of the application, followed by testimony of those who may be opposed. Once those persons in favor and those in opposition have had an opportunity to speak, the hearing on that application will be declared closed. Decisions on all applications heard this evening will be made by the board during the business meeting following the public hearing. However, you are not required to remain after the public hearing once your request has been heard and closed. During the business meeting, the board will consider all information of record A common vote of 4 members of the board shall be required to make a decision on each application. If you do not wish to wait for the business meeting later this evening, you may call the Kent County Planning Department between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. at 744-2471, or check the Kent County Planning Department website to learn of the board's ruling. All applicants will receive written notification of the board's decision. This notice may not be mailed until after the next scheduled meeting, but if approved, you are welcome to apply for any necessary permits prior to receiving this by mail. Please keep this decision in your records for both you and all future property owners. The public notice of this evening's hearing was published on April 4th, 2022 in the Delaware State News. In addition, all of the subject properties were posted with a sign prior to the hearing to further notify the public of the nature of the application. Thank you.
Thank you. This time we'll have a statement by council, the purpose of which is to help those who want to give testimony this evening to understand what is appropriate as testimony before this particular body. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Ms. Denny. The test for the granting of area variances is set forth by the Delaware Supreme Court in the case known as Board of Adjustment versus Quick Check Realty. The standard applied is whether a strict application of zoning regulations result in exceptional practical difficulties of ownership. To determine whether the exceptional practical difficulty test is met, the board must consider the following 4 factors. First, the nature of the zone where the property lies. Second, the character and uses of the immediate vicinity. Third, whether removal of the restriction on the applicant's property would seriously affect neighboring properties. And lastly, whether failure to remove the restriction would create unnecessary hardship or exceptional practical difficulty for the owner in relation to the owner's efforts to make normal improvements to the property. This factor is satisfied only when difficulties alleged by the owner are practical rather than theoretical and exceptional rather than routine, and it is here where the board considers whether the applicant is seeking more than is minimally necessary to relieve the asserted difficulty. In general, the board is not permitted to consider factors other than the 4 I've listed. So those speaking both in support of and in opposition to applications are urged to present only information bearing directly on those 4 factors, which restated are 1, the zoning district, 2, the character of the immediate vicinity, 3, the effect on neighboring properties, and 4th, whether the applicant faces exceptional practical difficulties of ownership. In particular, the presenters are instructed to exclude from the presentations any discussion of personal disputes or acrimony between the applicant and neighboring property owners, as the board is unable and unauthorized to resolve those disputes. Presenters must limit their remarks to those issues the board can decide. Madam Chairman, that concludes my statement.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. So at this point, when you're ready, we're ready to start with testimony.
Thank you. So first we have application A-22-10 for the Cannons. The Cannons are seeking a variance from the required 25% maximum impervious surface coverage to install an in-ground pool and a shed. The property is located on the east side of Waterfell Drive, approximately 262 feet south of Merganser Drive, located in the Pintail Point subdivision, southwest of Magnolia, in Levy Court District 4. It's zoned AC. So you will see here that the variance is from the required 25% so that they may install an in-ground pool with a concrete surround and a proposed shed. The existing total property area is 21,892. The permitted impervious of 25% would be 5,473 square feet. The existing impervious on the property exceeds the allowed 25% already at 30.88%, which is 6,760. The proposed additions of 600 square feet will add another 2.74%, creating a total of 33.62% impervious coverage if all approved. Here you will see the front of the home looking at the driveway. Looking down the street. And in the other location, or I'm sorry, other down the street. Here's looking at the existing building that's in the rear of the home with the existing pavers that are there, all counting towards the impervious coverage. And the approximate location of the pool and the shed would be going in this area. And the area, and the farther out. All right, so Mr. Cannon or Mrs. Cannon, if you would like to please come forward, state your name and address, and allow our attorney to swear you in.
Is on? Okay. Yeah, my name's Stephen Cannon. I am the owner of the property at 163 Waterfowl Drive.
Mr. Cannon, do you swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, you can proceed with your presentation.
Okay. As you can see, even on this overall aerial, the context of the rest of the neighborhood, you can see there's multiple pools in the properties, and there is a lot of, it seems to me, close impervious surface as well, similar to what we're trying to do on our property. And I think so in the context of the rest of the neighborhood, we are not doing anything beyond that. The existing pavers that were there, we just bought the property in October. So we just closed on our other house and planned on putting a pool. We looked at the property, we really liked it, and since the septic was in the front, we thought it was great to put a pool in, so we thought it was a great property for us. As you see the grass area in there, there's no interference. We do not have any, we have artesian water, so we're not in a public well, so that's one thing that I know it doesn't give us any extra impervious according to the code, but it doesn't, we don't interfere with any of that systems in the land is what we're trying to say there. And then I guess, so taking out those pavers to get it to the 25% would be impractical really for what we have there. That enclosure on the building in the back of the property actually has a hot tub in there with electric and everything else in there. So it's really, that would be a huge expense to remove the existing. So I know part of it is approving the existing conditions. The other part then would be to increase it with the pool itself. I did look into the possibility of pervious pavers around the pool. I have a few concerns with that personally with granddaughter and my nephews, nieces, with the cracks in between those pavers as being a danger for someone for injury. So I'd prefer to do the concrete. That's why I'm requesting this. Because it does seem to be something that could be a safety issue, not to mention the major increase in cost on that to go from one to the other. The pool, the shed itself would be basically, I requested 200, could go less, but I just kind of figured I'd shoot for something that would be practical for being able to put the rafts, pool stuff, all the maintenance stuff for the pool nearby, as well as the filter and all that. The electric would be right there for that. So it wasn't just an arbitrary shed that I just want to throw in the yard. There was purpose for that. And like I said, the neighboring properties to the north of us, both of them have the pools with the sheds in the back, the to the north. So again, in context, if you could go on one slide back with the closer zoom in, you can see there with the two pools, and they both have sheds and everything on those properties. But again, when you zoom out, you can see there's much more similar in the properties as well. So I don't think it's outside of character to request this overage be approved. So that's all I have, I guess.
Okay, if you'll just, now we get to ask you questions.
Okay, sorry, yeah, no problem.
Okay, so just kind of as a way of explaining some of the answers to some of the things that within this particular body, I mean, we're charged with protecting the code.
Understand.
So these may have come before us or may not have. I'm not sure. I've been here for many years. I don't recall hearing
Understand.
on those. But just because your neighbor has it doesn't set a precedence. It means you can have it because theirs may not be legal either. Okay, and we just,
Yeah.
it may not have been pointed to us,
And there
pointed out to
was,
us.
sorry, not to cut you off, I know in the application background information, looking at there are other properties that were granted up to 32% and 29% in previous.
But I did
and-
see that,
yes,
because
so,
I get
yeah.
the same packet
Yeah.
that you get. But I just want to make sure that you understand that there has to be, for us to find in your favor, there has to be an exceptional practical difficulty that makes your situation unique to others, so that we don't set a precedence that everybody who wants to can, because especially this past rainy season that we've had here, which from time to time happens here in Delaware, we've had like more than 100-year flood event in the past couple of years now. So obviously we have to be really careful, or all we're gonna have is floods. I mean, even our farm fields have been flooding and things. So just to give you a heads up.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm going to let anyone here who chooses ask questions.
Yes. Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Do you already realize coming before us that your impervious surface coverage exceeds the limit?
Yes, and I was not aware of that when I purchased the property. That was something that, again, when we looked at the property, we were told the septic was in the front, and it was like, oh, it's clear to put a pool in the back. And that was kind of our intention when we bought the property. Not aware, and was not aware, actually, we were getting ready to sign the contract with the pool company, and I happened to call the planning office to verify if there was anything else I needed to do. And they said, oh, you're over the impervious. And I was like, well, what can we do? And so here I am to hopefully alleviate, make my wife happy too while I'm at it, but, get approval. But yeah, so I understand that, where we are, and I'm aware of that, like I said, yeah.
So you understand before you came to us this evening that you were already over?
Yes, and when I called the planning office, I realized that. And again, this was all how we bought the property, with the appraised value, with everything as is.
So you're asking for an additional, I think, 2.7?
Yes.
Okay, how are you going to help us out? Because we need you to work with us to,
I have no problem working with you. So what we are planning on doing is some landscaping back there, and I have no problem putting some sort of dry well or rain garden to kind of keep water on the property in that area. I know it's not, it's to try to contain that. Other than that, I don't know what else. I mean, we have a lot of trees on that property in that area, in the northeast corner of the property. I really don't want to put anything in the front, obviously, with the septic there. I don't want to interfere with the septic system. So I'm not sure where else I could work with, but I'm willing to discuss that if you have any options that you can think of.
well, I know you commented that there were some pavers that you did not want to put around the pool. I heard your reasoning, but.
Yes, and I understand that. So I would be willing to do something like that if need be, but I would prefer not to, for safety and cost, for the reasons that I would prefer not to do that. Don't want to have children's toes stuck in the paver cracks. They are decent gaps in the pervious pavers.
And it seems like it's pretty simple pool design, just pool and a 3-foot concrete sidewalk.
Yes,
Appears
it's the minimum.
Nothing looks
Yeah.
too extravagant, so it doesn't look like he could cut too much out.
Yeah, unfortunately. Like I said, I could reduce that. I know I request for a 200 square foot shed. I can probably reduce that to 100, or if that would work. I can make that smaller, but I just figured I'd ask for the maximum size. We can work on something there too.
Can you speak to us any the drainage of the property? Any issues of standing water anywhere?
I have not seen anything on my property so far, and of course I've only been there since October, so I know we haven't hit some of the heavier wet seasons. But I do know in the upper northeast corner there is a catch basin in the yard, and it does pipe out front to the drainage swale out there, and all of that does drain to across the whole site, over by the open space, over to the retention pond on the other side.
So you have a catch basin in your yard? Is that what that was in the top right corner?
There is one up in there, yeah. It's a small catch basin already there to help kind of drain some water, I think. I'm not sure. Like I said, I haven't seen any evidence of anything, but I know I have one on my property that was there. Don't know who's installed that or anything, that's previous owner, or whether it was done by someone else.
Okay, so knowledge of the catch basin is helpful. The 2,000 square feet shed, you're willing?
200.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
gosh,
two-
2,000,
no.
hello.
That's almost as big as my house.
I should have had a cup of coffee before I came here. 200 square foot shed.
Yes.
It sits on a concrete slab, is this what's?
It would, yeah, I
It
probably
would.
would use a concrete slab. I could do concrete or wood. I haven't done anything design-wise, thought about it any more than just proposing the idea of a shed right now at this point.
Okay, so it could be reduced a little if necessary. Okay.
I
so
figured
you're
that would be
willing to
the
work with-
maximum size I would ever want to put there. I don't even know if I want to put it that big, but I figured I'd ask for the maximum. I can always reduce it
Okay, okay.
if it would make everybody happy.
Okay, so everything else was there when you arrived? It
Yes,
was-
that whole site was as is. I have not done any improvements to the property at all. This was our first improvement we had planned. Well,
Okay, and
that's
so in the event that this, big if, this
Okay.
were approved, you realize like you're out of opportunities
Yes.
to put anything else down that water does not go through.
Correct.
You know, this is,
Understand
okay.
completely.
Okay, anybody else?
Jenny,
Questions?
can I follow up?
Absolutely.
So you asked about the shed, and I wanted to ask the applicant if he could speak in a little bit more detail about the need for the shed. You've indicated that you've wanted a pool from the beginning,
Yes.
and the shed, as far as I've heard so far, seems to be something you need only because you want the pool. Is there storage area elsewhere on the property, in the garage? Why is a shed necessary?
We do have some storage in the garage. It is, I know it's a 3-car garage, but it gets tight pretty quick, surprisingly enough, with the stuff we have. But what we were planning on doing was, like I said, we do have to run electric out there as well as a gas line for the filter and for the heater for the pool as part of the design. So I was planning out the electric was there, putting it to the shed, and then having that as an option. Also, we did have a pool at our previous property, and with the rafts and chemicals and all the vacuums and skimmers and all that stuff, not having to put them as the garage, you can see is up front, the part that sticks out in the front on the bottom of the plan there. It would be obviously much more convenient to be able to put it near the pool. So it's more of a convenience in that end, and I understand that, but I figured if I'm here asking, I might as well request for everything I am hoping for, and see where we go from there. But yeah, so there is, it was basically would be something to serve the pool, so it would go hand in hand with that project.
Anybody else?
Is there an existing shed there now?
No, the area labeled with the P in there is actually a screened-in porch kind of space. It's only the pavers goes underneath it. And like I said, that contains a hot tub and some furniture, some chair or two. Not much room in there.
Sure, absolutely.
I drove through your neighborhood, and can we go back to the overhead view of the neighborhood? Yeah,
The next one, full.
farther, yeah, there we go. I drove, I guess that's north on the street that you reside on. I turned right, and then I started heading back towards the cul-de-sac. And a concern that I had was that entrance road that goes to nowhere right now. But that road has a sign on it at the end of it, and it says, I think it says for new development,
Yes.
a new development road. So one of the concerns I had was that I see that that's a buffer that I presume is open space for the community.
Correct.
But I don't know what's going to occur behind your property. But it says for future development. So one of the concerns I had was that it looks like that road is going to come through that ag land area, and that your property will abut future home lots, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I think, and again, that would be I think when you look at the overall projects of how the stuff is designed, wouldn't that be engineered by the engineer to contain the water on the site for those properties and not be worried about dumping additional water on our property?
Well, I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, I understand. I would have that concern too if they were to build something behind me, but again.
Right, both
that's-
ways. I'm concerned about how that might affect future property owners, and, well, I'd be just as concerned about how that would affect your property if they wanted to.
Correct. And yeah, there's a wide buffer that goes down around behind all the properties on the Waterfowl Drive, and actually across all the properties that butt up to the farm field there. There's that buffer there that goes around. It's a pretty wide buffer, and I would imagine that would maintain, and then they would build the properties on the other side of that. I can't speak for
Again, my concern is whether or not this would have an impact on your future neighbors, and again, you're asking for a variance that could have an impact. The ordinance is there to protect you and your neighbors.
Understand.
One of the other issues, your lot's about a half an acre. Are most of the lots in that community a half an acre, or do they vary in size?
They are half acre. From what I remember looking at from the GIS maps when we purchased the property, it just half acre seemed to be the standard. Some of them are kind of odd shaped off the different.
I couldn't tell. I thought maybe some of them were bigger and some of them were smaller, and making a determination, you have to ask, is it in the character of the neighborhood? And I'm saying, well, this is about a half an acre lot. Maybe some of the bigger lots, you wouldn't have the impervious surface issue, and I couldn't really tell whether or not they were all half acres. Some of them do have pools, some don't. That was my concern when I looked at it, and I don't have any other questions, but thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
How big is that tree line? Would you say is about like 30 feet wide, 25, 40, 50 feet?
Yeah, here you can see a little better. Let's see, just trying to estimate off that. It's a pretty, I would say 20 to 30. I'm not quite sure exactly, but it's a pretty wide buffer there, planted with the trees and all that in there.
And the field that's across from your house into,
Yes,
like, is that just an open field, or is it like?
that's the open space for the community.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, across the street there.
Can we go back to that catch basin? I'm very intrigued by that.
I'm intrigued as well by this catch basin.
I think go back.
You're not.
Yeah, right
gonna-
there.
You're
Go back
not
one
really
more.
going to be able to see it.
Is it that or no?
What is it? What?
Is it that gray thing in the right-hand corner or no?
No, that's actually, it's actually in the left-hand corner up farthest away from the gate, so you're not really going to be able to see
Okay.
it. It's kind of up over there between our house and the property to the north. It's up along that fence line. Like I said, I don't know whether it was engineered put in or but it does serve a purpose when you look out there. It is kind of the low spot back there, and then it just kind of brings the water to the front of the property where the drainage swale for the neighborhood is. So I'm not quite sure the story of that, I'll be honest with you.
Do your other neighbors have that, or is that just unique to your property? Do you
I
know?
believe it's unique to my property. I haven't heard of or seen on the other properties. I haven't heard of anyone having that or seen it on other properties, so I'm not quite sure.
Scott, can you talk to that? Do you know if that's something that was part of the whole neighborhood design, or is that something that property owner did?
I'm not aware of it, Mr. Kusick. Jamie, did you come upon that when you were researching this one?
No, I'm sorry. This is just now coming up.
So essentially, since you've been there, and again, we've had a pretty rainy spring here,
Yeah.
you know. Have you had any standing water in your yard? Do you know if your neighbors have?
I have not seen any standing water in my yard at all. I have not seen it in the neighbors' yards adjacent so far. I don't know. I know my neighbors to my north and the south said they were going to try to join the WebEx meeting, so I don't know if they're on. If they can add anything to that. Obviously, they've been here a little longer than I have.
Okay, well, we'll check to see if somebody's there. At some point, we give everybody an opportunity to either say they like it or they don't if they're attending the meeting. So, and it was posted, especially to your neighbors.
Yes.
Aside from the sign, then neighbors within 200 feet are
Yes.
notified that you're here asking for this so that they have an opportunity to object.
Absolutely.
Anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Cannon, if we approve this variance that you're requesting, will you still have to go before your HOA for approval?
Yes, I have to go to my HOA. My neighbor to my north is the HOA president, and I've talked to her about it, and she said once we get the approval, it should be simple to go through. So, yes.
And just one general comment, as a retired staking engineer, I think you can look forward to having neighbors behind you.
Okay.
I would agree with Mr. Jenkins.
Understand.
Sadly, it seems as though what we grow most in our farm fields these days are houses. So. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I think we're done jabbing at you.
No, I understand completely the potential of having the neighborhood there. I mean, I actually worked as an architect here in county for quite a while before I went to teaching, but yes, I expect there will at some point. I know the previous owner said they were having trouble with entrance permits to expand the neighborhood, so that was a whole nother, I think they kind of abandoned it at that point. But I understand someone else can buy the project anytime.
So just one more question before I let you go. In the event we said that the shed needed to be downsized, how horribly, I mean, it's sitting on a concrete slab, it's how, like,
Well, that's the thing. I would, if it's going to be on a concrete slab, I would make sure to put the proper drainage around it to maintain the water, obviously, not to try to dump the water off the property. I know that's a no-no, obviously. Or if I did a wood frame shed, I know, and I can, obviously I'm willing to be flexible with that. The main purpose of it would be for the pool stuff. I'd like to put my lawn stuff out there, but it's in the garage now. I can keep it there if I have to. But yes, that's kind of where I am with that, but I can work with that, whether I have to go down.
okay.
Sizes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? Going once, going twice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this application? Mark, is there anyone on the line?
Yep, I see no other participants online.
Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition of this application?
Again, no participants online wishing to speak in opposition.
Thank you. Seeing no one, we are going to close the public hearing for application A-22-10 for the Cannons.
Oops. Okay, the next application is A2211, Ethan J. and Bethany A. Zimmerman, trustees. Do we have someone here tonight to represent this application? Just raise your hand for now, and we'll call you up after we're done. Thank you. So the applicants are seeking three variants. They seek variances from the required 25-foot parking area setback from the front property line, the 15-foot parking area setback from the side or rear property lines, except that where commercial and industrial properties have a common property line, the setback may be reduced 5 feet if the square footage is saved is along adjacent property lines or provided as uncovered areas elsewhere on the site, and from off-street parking for non-residential uses located within or adjacent to residential or rural districts shall not be developed within the required front yard limit of said residential or rural district. This property is located on the southwest side of Blackiston Road, 1,530 feet northwest of the intersection of North Main Street and East Commerce Street, west of Kenton, Levy Court District 6th, Zoning District IG, General Industrial. So again, there's 3 variances being requested. We're going to kind of show them each as they are. The first one, you can see the applicant is requesting a variance from that 25-foot parking area setback to 7 feet from the front property line instead of the 25-foot required setback. And I should mention before we start this, just for some background for the board. So this is an existing paved parking area. And I think the applicant can also kind of expand on this. So this existing paved parking area is kind of unusual and unique in the sense that it doesn't actually serve the property that it's on. This building next to it, which is actually in the town of Kenton, it's not actually in the county's jurisdiction, the workers or the employees for this business on that particular property that's adjacent use this parking area instead of parking on the actual parcel where this building and business is located. They found this convenient, and they actually enter the building from the back. And the applicant can speak as to why that is, but that's just so you know why this existing paved area and how it's used as parking and how these variances have arisen. The reason these variances are being requested, I believe, and again, the applicant can speak to this, they are redeveloping or doing some work on this particular parcel, and during that kind of review, this parking arrangement came up, and it was discovered that they would need variances to continue to use this paved parking area as it is today. So that's the first variance. The second variance is the 15-foot parking area setback from side or rear. In this case, as I think you can see, the parking area is actually against the building, and the building is on the property line. Again, this is in the town of Kenton. It's not in Kent County. And I kind of looked at some historical photographs, and I see the building's been there since at least 1992. I don't know how long the current parking arrangement has been going on, but in this case, they are actually parking right on the property line instead of the 15-foot parking area setback that's required. And the final variance request is a bit redundant, but it requires that off-street parking for non-residential uses shall not be developed within the required front yard limit of said residential or rural district. So the front setback off Blackiston Road, it is a major road, so it will be 75 feet. And the current parking is obviously much closer. It is 7 feet from the front property line. So in this case, that's where the variance comes in on this. So this is looking down the road from the site. This would be looking probably west. And this is the direction, I believe, going into Kenton from the road. And you can kind of see the parking area on the side here. If I can show you this, you can kind of see where that is, where the edge of that is. That's kind of what we're talking about here. And again, there's the building on the property line, and you can see that parking area there. You can see a door a little further up. Right there where I put that, apparently that's where the employees park, along there where the AC units are, and then they go in through that door. Here's the entrance to that area there. The parking area is on the right. This is looking back to the rest of the site where there's actually a business back there. This is further back. This is another parking area that has nothing to do with this. We should probably remove that slide, so those really aren't relevant. So this is looking back. You can kind of see the parking area far up on the right in that building. You can get a closer view of that. And here's the aerial photograph kind of in, and again, you can see the building right there, and there's the parking area. And in the back, the applicant can speak to this, but I believe this is a chair manufacturing plant. And here's the higher up aerial photograph to give you a character of the area. Again, the area to the immediate right there, all that's in the town of Kenton. And again, the building and all is not subject to the county's jurisdiction. It's within the town. Okay, Mr. Minnick, if you'd come up, please, and allow our attorney to swear you in and give testimony, please.
Name and address for the record, please.
Name is Kevin Minnick from Minnick Engineering, 868 Greenwood Road, Greenwood, Delaware.
Mr. Minnick, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Good evening. It's good to be back in front of the Board of Adjustment. It's been a little while. It's good to see you again, Joan. I feel like I need to give more background than what Scott gave, because I didn't just come here tonight because Mr. Zimmerman called me up and said, we need a variance for this little paved parking area. They are doing an administrative site plan on their piece, which I don't know if Scott can go back to where he showed like the overall aerial. They're adding 600 square feet of building area to their site. And the way this all came about was I prepared the administrative site plan. It went into review. It went through 2 reviews for the planning staff at Kent County. And when I labeled that existing paved area, it came up as a flag, and they said, oh, well, you'd have to go to the Board of Adjustment. So here we are, okay? And I know in order to keep that little paved area, it sounds really bad because you need 3 variances to do it. But that paved parking area, in accordance with what I was told from Mr. Zimmerman, and he could probably speak to some of this too, that paved parking area was paid for by Shoreline, which is the adjoiner, some 17 years ago. It's been there for 17 years. It's been in operation for 17 years. Nobody's ever complained about it. So in a sense, if we enforce the zoning regulations, it would actually have more of an adverse impact on the neighbor than if you didn't, because now you're going to tell them, well, now we got to remove it. So that's why how we got here tonight is, you know, it wasn't because we just came here for this. It was because we were doing something in the back and the rear of the property at the chair shop. So that kind of gives you some background. I mean, we'd be open to a modified approval. I don't want to put that off the table, but it would be really nice if we could just get the approvals that we need, the variances we need, and leave it as is. That would be our goal. To be a good neighbor for one thing, and to complete their administrative site plan. So I'd be glad to answer any questions anybody has, and I'm sure Mr. Zimmerman or the rest of them may have something to say too.
Just one question here. It's probably might be for the owner of the property, but do they currently utilize that whole strip there for parking?
They do all their parking in the rear, back by the buildings in the rear. So the parking area that Scott showed back there was one of the parking areas that they utilize. And I don't know if you want to go back.
I'm sorry. So I'm talking about that stretch where from the 7-foot variance that you guys are requesting to the building, that small little piece there, where that fence is.
Up to the building, yes.
Yeah, so they currently use that whole stretch there.
I would say, yeah.
They fill it up.
Mm-hmm.
So taking away that amount will affect them.
The whole way it came up was because you have to list the amount of impervious surface on the site, okay? And when you go to the back of the site, the majority of it is building. There's some concrete pads, but the rest of it is all gravel back there, so it's not really considered impervious. And then there was this one little piece. So I actually labeled it existing parking area. Well, that threw up the red flags with you know, the planning department. So yeah, I would say they use it all.
But although you identified it as parking area, it's impervious. It's gravel.
That's
right?
why I put
it's
it on there.
impervious.
And then like Mr. Zimmerman said, you know, we're trying to be honest, and then that's what you get for being honest. Here we are in front of the Board of Adjustment, so.
But you're not before us for impervious soil because you have plenty of that, right? I mean,
Right,
that's what it
right,
looks, you're not
correct.
before us about impervious
It has
soil.
nothing to do with,
It's about this particular area realistically being
in violation of the current
mistakenly
ordinance.
identified as parking without those little key that says impervious soil parking, impervious parking. Okay. All right. That makes a little more sense. And so essentially, can we go back to the one with the yellow line, the little diagram? The yellow, the up to the back. Sorry.
Back to
Ta-da, ta-da. Okay, so that driveway all the way back to the back where the chair shop is, and there's plenty of parking and all of that. There's none of that is shared with that little neighbor that's in that front.
Shoreline, yeah.
The
right.
shoreline. None of that's shared. It's just, I mean, obviously sometimes we're neighborly and so customer parks on the wrong spot or something, but it's not designated to be shared. That's theirs, this pipe
I
of a
think it
driveway
was an
here.
agreement that was made, and like I said, if they want to talk to that, they
Yeah,
can, because I
okay.
don't know
We'll ask them
exactly
when
the
they come back.
particulars, but it was agreed on, you know, they purchased it to put it in there. Because there's a lot of truck traffic right in front of Shoreline site, right in front of the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually safer for probably people to be parking around the back, coming through the back door rather than parking right in the middle. of
Yeah,
the-
I'm kind of familiar with the area. I mean, I know there's
So-
the traffic. So essentially, this 600 square foot expansion you're making is going where?
Back, let's see. It's off of the back side of the building that's right in the middle. Yeah. It's off the back side of that,
Okay, so that,
which isn't much bigger than Mr. Cannon's shed, by the way, but because there was a site plan, we have to update it. So,
okay, so who's on first? All right. Okay, so I think now I understand for me. Does anybody else have?
I just had a question for Scott. Do you know what that distance is to that building where you guys would like to see the modified approval?
So that's a good question, Mr. Kuzic. And what we've done is, and to answer your question directly, we do not. And the reason for that is the building is actually not part of this site. It's in Kenton. So we don't have a measurement for this. I think what you're asking. So what
it's
we've
about-
kind of.
well, I know it's about 20 feet. 'Cause I
Okay.
looked at that today. It's about 20 feet.
So as you probably read, that's why staff with, what we're suggesting is some kind of modified, just to stop it at the building, to eliminate this parking, but, that's okay. Just to put it back at the same front line as the building. That seemed a reasonable compromise.
Okay, and then when we do that property, that where you're drawing that line, the side that meets the grass is not in the county? Or am I misinterpreting that?
Sure, Ms. Denny. So, right, I guess everything right on that side of the building over there that's in the town of Kenton. The county begins on the red line over where the parking area is. That's actually the municipal boundary. And I would add, if, and it's up to the board, of course, to decide, if this were, the modified were agreed upon, we would ask that this be removed and perhaps planted in grass like this, so naturally to prevent parking.
Okay. All right, anybody else?
I just had a quick question. So they're two different companies, right? So the chair company has the one in the back, and then Shoreline.
Shoreline, yeah, is the building right there. Separate property.
Do they have a written agreement, or was it just kind of like a verbal?
It's a verbal.
You know, I think we'll probably get, when we're done with you, I guess
Right.
I should say, we'll probably have someone represent them so we can ask questions as well. I think it would be helpful to most of us.
Okay.
So, okay. Go ahead with your idea. Okay. Anybody else? Questions for Mr. Minnick? Okay, I think we're good so far.
Thank you, Mr. Minnick. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak in favor of this application? If you'll come up and, please, sir, come on up and allow our attorney to swear you in and allow you to give testimony. Thank you.
My name is Fred Zimmerman. I am the one who owned the property when Shoreline came along and
Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes.
I'm
sir.
over here.
Okay.
So do you swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm that it's the truth.
Okay. Please proceed.
Okay. In 1985, I bought the property that's in question here, where we built our chair shop. And at that time, the property, what is now termed as Shoreline, they did not yet own it at that time. Within the next few years, they bought the property. And as their business grew, they wanted permission to park their cars for their office alongside our driveway. To be good neighbors, we said, sure. We had no good use for the property beside our driveway out by the road, 600 feet out. So they proceeded to use it. And in time, it would be so nice if it were blacktopped instead of grass or stone. Sure, go ahead. We have no written agreement. It's just friendly neighbors, use it. So that's where we are. Any other questions?
Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Zimmerman, Mr. Townsend?
I'll ask first Scott and then maybe an affirmation from Mr. Zimmerman. Is it just a function of that being a photograph that it looks like the structure is angled in towards the lane versus what we have in Exhibit C that looks like the building is running parallel with the lot line? Understand what I'm asking?
I understand that the building is very, very near to the property line. It may not be 100% square, but you can see their chain link fence, which is out toward the road at the end of that parking area. But it is very nearly in line with the fence and the building.
So the lane as it goes in, it tapers in towards the building a little bit?
It does, yes. I was required to have 90 feet on the road. So we bought land from the neighboring farmer to make it wide. At the point, we went straight in, and then it tapers back to the 50 feet required to go in through for our driveway. So that's why it's wide at the point. We actually have a sign out there. We have a permit for that sign. So it's wider at the front because they required, so I think it was 90 feet on the road.
So if the parking spaces that are being utilized now were eliminated, would there be enough depth between the existing lane and the area between the lane and the building to allow for head-in parking?
The way it is right now, most of the cars are parked from the lane going straight in. They don't park along the roadway. They park beside each other along the lane. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that correctly.
Is that kind of it, Mr. Zimmerman? They would pull in and just, the cars would face like this?
Oh, yeah, that's how they park. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So they're like head in like that.
And how many cars? How many are there usually?
Maybe 6, 8. Maybe not even 8.
Okay.
It's
So it varies depending on what day, who's working. But.
And it is primarily their office staff that works there. Office and maybe the owners, management, I'm not sure.
For that parking to be eliminated, where would they have to park?
Well, if it were completely eliminated, they would be forced to park on their property inside their fence. See, they have several buildings. The office building where they park is on the picture, it looks like it's gray. The white roof buildings are not that close to our lane. And obviously, it's a steel construction company, and they have steel setting here and there. They have big trailer trucks back in toward the buildings to get unloaded. And obviously, they would need to make some decisions as to where their office staff is going to be parked. And I know even there are some times someone will come and, I suppose, are folks that come and clean the office. They park out there along the lane and go in the back door and do their thing. The other folks that come in need to go in an open chain link fence, which is locked at night. And I'm sure that would pose a difficulty for them. But I mean, that's their business. We just gave them the privilege to come in and use it, and we like to be friendly neighbors from here on.
Sure.
Mr. Blair, is the public policy behind the setback that you want to discourage cars from backing out of parking spaces in close proximity to an entrance?
Certainly, Mr. Townsend, that will be a concern. The other thing, for instance, the 25-foot parking setback from the front property line, you've probably seen in your travels where, especially used car dealers and stuff, they want to park right to the edge of the road, and that could become a visibility problem or something from someone pulling out and all, hence the 25 feet.
Mr. Zimmerman, how much traffic do you have at the chair shop on a regular basis? How would you characterize the traffic?
Okay, our business is little wholesale and mostly little retail and mostly wholesale. We have some trucks come in for deliveries. Even from the wholesale business, we mostly deliver or have it shipped out. So it's not a fast stream of people coming in our driveway.
You don't have patrons visiting a showroom on a regular basis. It's mostly wholesale.
Well, I said mostly wholesale, but we do have some folks that come in and want something for themselves. There is some traffic, but there can be a day where there may be one or no retail traffic. Cars come in. Another day, it could be several.
Well, I can understand. I'm very grateful that we heard from you, because now, as you're telling me about having to widen the entrance, that makes sense to me. Like once they said, okay, this has to be legalized, you have to widen the entrance. So now that really created the issue, because it brought the issue up that, the widening, and actually then also kind of in and of itself created a little more area for that parking behind the building. So that at least helps me understand how it got to be, but I've been doing a lot of this in different towns and stuff in Delaware for many years, and I really feel like there are no straight lines anywhere on any plot plan, at least in Kent County, if not in most of the state. So essentially, if we were to go, you're aware that the county recommended we deny this application, but they also offered a modified approval. And if we were to go with a modified approval, it really does not hinder your business or what is going on with you. What it hinders is your ability to be the good neighbor that you have been. Am I interpreting that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Now, I would like to entertain this thought to you all, and that is, if we are limited in the space that is paved, you will notice that the very front part is the widest and is the most safe. So if you say it only needs to be at the back, then that gives us the most shallow place for parking.
So your thoughts are, if we are going to limit it, which of course totally doesn't go with the code, but the best place to make that parking would be along the fence as opposed to along the building right there, because that's the widest part before the lane starts to narrow, as you go up.
Yes, that is correct. However, in favor of the neighbor, where they go in the building is toward the back.
So do you usually see more cars closer to the door or closer to the street?
Well, they are closer to the door. They generally park closer to the door.
And then start stacking.
They do, but I did want to point that out, that is the place where the cars are closest to the driveway.
Wow, anybody else? Questions?
Now, I am the one that bought the property originally. My two sons are here, Ethan and Winfred. They are with me in business, and it is Ethan that actually has control of the property at this time. But because I was there and I was the one that bought it, I was the one that gave them the liberty to park there, I felt like I should give my word to it. And if either of them want to speak anything, I would welcome that too. But I wanted to give this as something up front.
Always good for us to have the background, and they will be given an opportunity to speak should they choose. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
So at this point, I think we're done with questions for you, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to give testimony in favor of this application? Anyone? Yes, sir, please come up. If you allow our attorney to affirm or swear you in before you give testimony, please.
Your name for the record, please, and address.
Winfred Zimmerman, 615 Scene Lane, Clayton, Delaware.
Mr. Zimmerman, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do affirm to tell the truth. I'm Ethan's brother. It's been introduced to you already. I wanted to add, there's one specific thought that I wanted to add, and you can ask any questions about that. If you could turn back to the view of the front part of the property there, looking to that correctly. Thank you. Okay. On a normal weekday, there is so limited parking within the shoreline construction, within the chain link fence, that at 6 o'clock in the morning, there is oftentimes a row of vehicles outside the chain link fence. There is so little room in there that they have to park, they have to parallel park along the road. Well, they go into the grass onto Shoreline's property, but outside the fence. They park beside it, and they park up into the town of Kenton. There's different parking spots in there. So it's extremely limited parking on their specific property. So that's the one thing I wanted to say. I grew up there. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Does anybody have any questions about that? I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. Anyone else in the room that would like to give testimony in favor of the application? Favor? Mark, is there anyone online who would like to give testimony in favor of the application?
I see no participants online that, to give testimony at this time.
Thank you. Okay, hearing no more testimony in favor of the application, is there anyone here who would like to give testimony in opposition to this application? Anyone in the room or online?
Again, no one online at this time.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, hearing no more testimony for or against A2211, this hearing is now officially closed.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, before we go into the business meeting, does anybody need a break, or should we just go on? We're going to keep going then, it looks like. So public hearing closed, and now we're going to call to order the business meeting. First order of business is approval of the minutes from the March 17th Board of Adjustment meeting. And I'll need a motion and a second.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the Board of Adjustment meeting for March 17, 2022.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Hearing none, the Kent County Board of Adjustment business meetings for March 17th, 22 are hereby approved. I just want to make a housekeeping statement. We closed that meeting, and I called to order the business meeting, and I failed to call the roll. Nobody left. We didn't leave, but I'm just wondering if, just as a matter of housekeeping, it's best if we just acknowledge that we're all still here. Is that?
Acknowledgement is sufficient that that our quorum is still in place.
Yeah, no one has left. Okay. So the second order of business is notice of decisions for the March meeting, and they are 2022 6, 7, and 8.
Yes, I'll make a motion for the notices of decision for the March 17, 2022 meeting for applications A2206, A2207, and A2208.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Hearing none. Notice of decisions for the March 17th, 22 meeting are hereby approved. Under old business, on our agenda, we show that we had old business of Becker Morgan Group, and that we were going to bring that off the table this evening, so it was tabled last month, but that has been withdrawn for this meeting and perhaps will be revisited next month. So we are ready to deliberate on the applications that we heard in our public hearing this evening. And seeing as both applicants are here, we'll begin with Mr. Cannon.
Okay, so first we have application A-22-10 for Mr. and Mrs. Cannon. And again, they are seeking a variance from the 25% maximum impervious surface coverage to install an in-ground pool and a shed.
Okay, any thoughts or discussion?
Yeah. Yes, I have a comment. When you look at the overall composition of that development, just from the aerial view, it does look like a precedence has already been set. I mean, I don't have all the information in front of me, but if you look to, I'm just guessing it's like the northeast area. If my glasses are serving me correctly, there's like 4 or 5 pools just on that other street. It's not, yes, that area there. So I'm concerned about a precedence already. And then when you look at the application in question, there's 2 neighbors with a pool, and this would possibly be a third.
Mr. Jenkins, pools are permitted, so.
Yes, I understand, Mr. Townsend.
Right.
I don't have the liberty of all of the numbers in terms of whether these people are outside of their impervious area or they're not. Just looking as a general comment, yes, pools are permitted. And if you look specifically at our particular applicant, I'm just concerned.
So the existence of numerous pools in the area suggests that what is being requested is not out of character, number one, and number two, it lends itself to the argument that the property owner is challenged in doing what might be considered a normal improvement to that property.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Townsend. I think that looking at that area right there, it definitely fits within that character. And then, unfortunately, he bought the property with the impervious coverage already over the maximum. So, and my feeling is making him remove any of that is a hardship on him, on the applicant. He bought this property, and that's what the landscape and the hardscape is part of the appraised value of that property, and making him remove it, takes a hit on that, and also the financial hardship, cost-wise, to remove it.
I also think the property happens to be unique with that catch basin. We don't really see that often.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I do believe that what makes this an exception to to the other properties is that he already has a catch basin. I mean, again, when you look at the prior applications here, there are far less of those than there are people with swimming pools. And again, you don't have to come before us to have a swimming pool. But when you come before us for other issues, that's where we make discovery about impervious soil. So in agreement, he had no idea when purchasing the property that he already exceeded, because that's not typical part of a settlement. Like when your lot lines are off or anything, and then your attorneys have a bunch of homework to do before they settle. So that, and totally in agreement with comments from Mr. Busick and Ms. Hudson. I do believe two things. One, you had no idea it was there. Two, the catch basin makes this different than other applications who would come before us. Any other thoughts or discussion or comments?
He also has that, I guess, like the 20-foot backyard buffer zone for potentially runoff could go there, where we don't normally see that 20-foot buffer zone of community space behind each property.
You know, I agree with you there, definitely. That certainly helps.
And there's lots of trees there which tend to drink water. Anybody else? Any comments? Thoughts?
Was there any, is there any need to have a discussion about the shed size?
Well, where I was, when I asked the question about the shed size, where I was going with that was just to be certain that in the event we would need to reduce that as part of a motion or somebody's feelings during discussion, definitely, I think that I just wanted to be certain that he would be willing to meet us, and it appears as though he would. That's up, if anybody wants to discuss that, or again, we're looking for discussion.
And we could
or
set that
motion.
number, and he could decide if he wants to take it from some of the concrete sidewalk or from the shed. I mean, we could leave it up to the applicant. If we set that maximum impervious coverage, and he could take it.
And
But with that said, I'll make a motion.
okie dokie.
I'll make a motion to approve application A22-10 to allow a maximum impervious coverage of 33%, total of the property. As stated earlier, this definitely fits within the neighborhood. No effects on neighboring properties. Definitely a hardship there if we ask the applicant to remove any of the existing pavers that are currently there, and also just a normal improvement to the to his property.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion second. When you're ready, call the roll.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Hudson?
For A-22-10, I vote to approve the impervious surface to the max of 33.62%. I believe the applicant's request is within the character of the surrounding area. I don't believe the removal of the restriction would seriously affect the neighboring property. And I believe this property is unique with the catch basin being on property and the backyard buffering zone.
Can I just
kidding.
in a sec, excuse me 1 minute before you finish? Well, we have a motion, it's been seconded, so we have a motion on the floor now. However, you said 33 instead of 33.62. And I didn't catch it until Ms. Hudson did. So would the maker of the motion like to restate that? Or do you?
No, I'd like to run with 33%.
Okay. So we're at 33.
So the motion is for a modified approval.
Yeah.
All right, let me adjust. Okay, for A-22-10, I vote to approve impervious surface up to a max of 33%. Applicant's request is within the character of the surrounding area. I don't believe the removal of the restriction would seriously affect the neighboring property, and I believe the property is unique with the catch basin being on property with the backyard buffer zone.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols?
In connection with A22-10, I vote to approve the motion. I find that it maintains the character and uses of properties in the immediate vicinity.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins?
I vote in support of application A22-10 with the modified motion based upon really the testimony of the applicant and the uniqueness of the catch basin and the buffer zone behind the property.
Thank you. Mr. Cusick?
I vote for the modified approval per my motion.
Thank you. Ms. Denny?
I vote yes to the modified approval. I do believe that what sets this this property aside from all the others that which we can't tell because we didn't have meetings and we weren't involved with those, is that there is already a drainage system set up, and again, I agree with it being a normal improvement. It's not going to change the character of the community. And also, I just want to correct the fact that I do not believe a precedence was set with the other pools that were shown within this development, because we were not in attendance at any meetings, and we don't know what went on. And we don't know what the impervious soil is on those situations. So I don't believe heretofore a precedence was set, and it certainly is not my desire to set a precedence with my positive vote now.
Thank you. That's 5 showing in favor of the modified motion of 33% impervious coverage.
Thank you. Having received unanimous positive votes for a 33% coverage, application A 2210 is hereby approved.
Thank you. Next, we have application A-22-11 for Mr. and Mrs. Zimmerman for the trustees. This is for seeking the variances from the required 25-foot parking area setback from the front property line, 15 feet parking area setback from side or rear property lines, except that where commercial or industrial properties have a common property line, the setback may be reduced 5 feet if the square footage saved is added along adjacent residential property lines or provided as uncovered areas elsewhere on the site. And off-street parking for non-residential uses located within or adjacent to residential or rural districts shall not be developed within the required front yard limit of said residential or rural district.
Okay. Feelings, discussion.
I feel they're being very, very nice neighbors, and kind of shocked that nobody from the company that wants it decided to show up and speak about it. But that's just my 2 cents. I'd like to know more how many people are in the office.
Well, and essentially, I agree. It's they are here spending their money, asking to apply for this application, asking for this relief, so that they can accommodate their neighbors, and so I feel somewhat exactly the same way you do. Anybody else?
I just want to make sure I'm clear on the first request for variance. The 25-foot parking setback from the front property line to 7 foot. So the area right now where the paved or gravel exists for parking space, from there to the front of the property this is a staff question. From there to the front of the property, how far is it now?
7 feet.
7 feet currently. So, all right, so they want to legalize that. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Nichols. And in these lines, of course, imaginary, the telephone pole is approximately where the right-of-way is. So, right, that strip of grass, right, where the parking ends is approximately 7 feet from the front property line there.
And I must have missed the term legalized when I was reviewing this, because I kept looking at variance, and I'm going, well, what's the variance here? So they're really not they're not offering any more parking. They just wish to legalize the parking that's already there, correct? I'm sorry, I just want to clarify that.
Correct. That's what they're requesting Correct, to keep things as they are, to allow that parking to remain 7 feet from that front property line as opposed to 25 feet. And then the other part of that variance is the 75 foot because it's a major road, which of course will push it way back there somewhere. So there's actually two parts to this as well.
So at this point on number one, so you're absolutely right, and you're right, we're asking the questions because I get confused. So you're absolutely right. So what we're dealing with now, the first one, the 25-foot parking setback to the existing 7 feet. And as we here with this grass, and then further down, then they're going to be asking for more. And the other thing I just want to state, seeing as this is just a comment discussion aspect, is in Kent County, and not just Kent County, but you see a lot of these things were just grandfathered in. They're the way they were because my father shook hands with somebody or my great-grandfather, and that's the way it's always been. And which makes our job a lot more difficult. And this is how we sort it out. And I'm sure that once these things are sorted out, then later in life, if buildings and things have to be sold, then the attorneys throughout the county are much happier that we gave them something to work with. But that you're exactly right. At this point, we're dealing with that, and they just are asking us for a variance, which then, of course, by sense of the county legalizes to the code what that is. Mr. Townsend, I can see you want to say something.
Yeah, well, it's ironic. They're really not here to legalize that, but it's required of them that this be dealt with in order to get the approval they want to make the other improvements to the site.
Exactly.
I had another question. Maybe it's for staff. If they were to tell this other company that they couldn't park there, would they even need these variances? If they were just to say, hey, this is our property, go park on your property, would they still need to have these variances, or they can just make it grass again and get their approval for their other thing?
Right, Ms. Hudson. So I guess regardless of who parks there, whether it's the owner or they allow others to park there, what's at issue is these setbacks, and as long as parking remains there, it would be in violation of the code without a variance. So if they didn't let their neighbors park there, they couldn't park there, but they also could not park there. It's just the parking area in general is in violation of the code regardless of who parks there.
But if they made it grass again, they could go on with their other...
If they voluntarily said, we're not going to park here anymore, certainly no variances would be in order. Of course, they're here tonight because they do want to park there. But, whether it's paved, grassed, or gravel, it's still parking. So...
If the variances are denied, then do they have to convert that crush and run area there to grass?
I think that will be the preference for staff, and that's not to say they couldn't park there if it was, grass or dirt or any other thing. But I think the intent would to remove its kind of favoritism towards parking by making it graveled, whereas if it's grassed, it would be understood it really wasn't made for parking as opposed to the way it is now.
So then, should we have them establish no parking signs?
Mr. Townsend, on that, I guess what it's at hand here is you can't park there. I don't know that you need a variance to have crushed gravel on your property, but the problem is it can't be parked on.
So the Zimmermans would have to ask their neighbors if they could post no parking signs on the neighbor's structure. I don't think that's what you meant.
Oh, okay. Now, exactly what you're saying. That escaped me completely, Mr. Townsend. Thank you.
But you're saying actual signs could be placed there that say no parking. I don't think that would be a zoning requirement or necessary to bring this site into compliance. I don't think we would require the property owner to enforce the zoning code against I guess himself.
Okay.
My thought is that, I mean, they've been doing this for 17 years, but just thinking long-term, what will this affect if we do allow it long-term, say 15, 20 years down the road? What happens? I mean, I can't think of anything that could possibly be a bad thing.
You know, I agree, although sometimes, you know, I'll see situations where it looks relatively innocent and they're parking there and what does it hurt? But then you realize that there's also in other ways liabilities and things concerned. If somebody's parked there, somebody comes down the drive, they miss it, somebody backs into somebody, something like that. And when I first started doing through the county, I was always cautious about doing anything that caused liability, not that I think it would fall on the county. But, so, you know, it's, again, like you say, they've been doing it for forever and nothing's ever happened. So, fortunately, that's why I don't make motions, because I don't think
the only
that's
thing
what
I
the
can see is
code's
that
about.
building gets torn down and they reestablish that property in a different manner, and that drive or that parking just goes away in general.
As part of the site plan, because it would then have to fit within the setbacks of the county.
And that parking is just for this property, which does that. I mean, there's no useful parking for that property in that location.
I see what you're saying. Go ahead.
Is there a liability consideration that the board has to take into account because the property owner has allowed the adjacent property owner to use their property if there was an accident and then the variance was granted? Could that somehow be a liability for the county?
I don't think the county's liability has anything to do with the permission that's been granted by the applicant to the neighbor to allow for parking. The question that was, I think, initially raised by Ms. Denny was what liability the county might face for not being sufficiently or granting relief from restrictions that are intended to enhance public safety. Should someone be injured as a result of that, could the county be liable? And I think the liability is you can never say none, but I'd say very minimal.
And if I may add, I think, and I can speak for staff, when we roundtabled this, we felt, you know, parking stopping at the building is an impediment to vision. So if you don't park forward of that, you don't create an additional visibility problem since the building's already there. So that's why we felt the safest was a modified variance that just stopped the parking at the building.
So at this point, we can have more discussion, or somebody can make a motion.
Yeah, in connection with application A22-11, the applicant's requesting a variance from the 25-foot parking setback from the property line to 7 feet. Staff has recommended that they be granted modified approval from the 75-foot front setback for off-street parking in the front yard of adjacent lot to be the same distance from the front property as the building it abuts on the adjacent parcel. My motion is that the staff's modified approval for that setback from the front property yard be granted.
If I wait, Mr. Townsend, and I understand what you're saying, Mr. Nichols, there are 3 variances, so I think each has to be addressed perhaps individually. I don't know how you feel we should handle that, Mr. Nichols.
I don't know how to do that.
Have the 75-foot before us as a motion, so no, I think we should do them separately. Well, I guess,
Well, doesn't the 75-foot setback address the 25-foot parking setback from the front property line to 7 feet? Doesn't that get us where we want to be, or no?
It does, but
I withdraw my motion. Please, somebody make a motion, tell me how to proceed.
Let me take it correct. You okay? Okay. I'll make a motion that we deny the first 5-foot setback.
Thank you.
Do you want to do them individually, or you want to do it all at once?
All at once.
Okay. So I make a motion that we deny a variance for the 25-foot parking setback, and then I make a motion that we approve the variance for a 10-foot parking side setback from commercial or industrial property line requirement to allow for parking to the side property line abutting the building on the adjacent property. And then I make a motion that we do a modified approval based off staff recommendation for a variance of the 75-foot setback for the off-street parking in the front yard limit of the adjacent residential lot to be at the same distance from the front property as the building as it abuts on adjacent parcel. I believe that these variances do not change the characteristic of the properties, and I believe it stays inside character of where the property it stays in the nature of the zone where the property lies. I believe that the property has been used that way for 17 years, and I believe it's not going to seriously negatively affect the neighboring properties.
So is that motion consistent with the modified approval recommended by the staff?
It is, Mr. Townsend. It does address them equally as staff has recommended, if that's what the board wants to do.
Right. So next question is there a second?
I'll second that.
okay, so we have a motion, a second. When you're ready, call the roll.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins?
I vote in support of application A22-11 based upon the testimony of the property owner and the integrity and the uniqueness of the relationship that Mr. Zimmerman has with the business owner that was established years ago. I would go on record as supporting it based on that.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols?
Action with application number A22-11. I support that motion, and I find that it is consistent with the nature of the zone where the property lies.
Thank you. Mr. Cusick?
I vote yes, per the motion for application A22-11. Variance 1, the 7-foot setback from the 25 feet, or the 18-foot variance that's required for the 25-foot parking setback from the front property for safety reasons is my reason for moving forward with the denial of that one. For 2, the 10-foot parking setback from side property, 10-foot variance. It fits within character. It's been there for doing this for 17 years. And then the third one was 75-foot front setback. The modified approval to abut with the existing building there. Same reason. It's been there for 17 years. Fits within the character of the area.
Thank you. Ms. Hudson?
I vote yes per my motion.
Thank you. Ms. Denny?
I'm going to vote yes. I agree that all of these variances are needed. I think that the entire application is reason enough, just because, you know, of the bordering with the county I'm sorry, I can barely talk. You know, the way that the way the property lies on the borders between the county and again, I think, I really feel as though they're not responsible for how the neighboring property, the neighboring business satisfies their parking, and I think that they've been most generous in trying to do something that lends itself to helping them. And so at this point, we don't want to set a precedence. Again, there's an exceptional practical difficulty caused by just the way this abuts the property line. So yes.
Thank you. So that's 5 in support of the motion.
Okay, having received unanimous positive votes on the modified approval of this application, A 2211 is hereby approved with modifications. And if at that point we have no further business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.